to the Gaming Discourse. I am Tyler Frater alongside Richard De La Cruz.
Hello there.
And Chief Engineer, Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
Present.
It is November 2nd, 2021. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse, where we post videos. The latest video is a review of In Sound Mind, which is a surprisingly good and surprisingly creative and different psychological horror game that I highly recommend. So check out that. Working on some stuff right now. If you can hear, I've got a little smooth jazz, nasally tones going on at the moment, which is why we're doing a remote podcast just to keep things safe and above board. And also, we're not going to be doing a video podcast this week for a number of reasons. Partially because I just don't want to deal with our Mac that's slowly dying.
Let's just say keeping up with appearances.
Yeah, we could say that. And hey, maybe soon, we'll have a better computer. Go to our Patreon, sign up to the $75 a month Patreon setting. And
you guys are getting paid?
I was supposed to talk about that out loud. Okay. Lots of news to get into. I'm going to throw it to Richard, and I'm going to volunteer you to talk about what games you've been playing.
I've been playing, I feel, a good amount this week, so I have some stuff to talk about. Last week, I finished Castlevania, Circle of the Moon, and so I moved on to the next part, which is Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance. And this was my favorite of the three Castlevania games that were on the Game Boy Advance. I like it because I enjoy the main character, who kind of really doesn't. When Dracula comes out, everybody knows what their job is. It's like I gotta go kick Dracula's ass. But in this one, it's like his best friend comes along. And he's like, "Hey, our friend was kidnapped. She's in this weird castle." And he's like, "What? All right, let's go save her." He goes to this castle. And it's just like, that's weird. What's this doing here? And then just throughout it, you find out, oh, Dracula's here. All right, well, I'm here. So
might as well.
His job wasn't actually to go kill Dracula. It was just to save his friend. Dracula kind of just gets in the way. So,
okay.
So it's, and I guess I'm someone who enjoys having a character who's very erstwhile about it. Like, sure. That's why I like Assassin's Creed Black Flag a lot, because he wasn't like an assassin. It was just, hey, I'm going to earn money with this outfit. Oh, okay. And eventually kind of gets wrapped into it. Yeah. But so far, like, for me, it's such an improvement over Circle of the Moon in many ways. Mostly it's map design. Its map design is a hell of a lot better. And you have the ability to dash forward and backwards. So it makes going through the map a very speedy process. Which is enjoyable on its own. You have way more abilities at your disposal. So you have stones that you can equip to your whip, and they will give it different attributes like fire, water, ice, whatever. And then you have spell books, which are supplemental to your sub weapons. There's a lot of information here, I know. But Castlevania sub weapons are your cross, your knife, your axe, your holy water, your holy book, with the Bible basically. But if you press up and B, you will throw one of these items on their own. However, if you turn on your spell book, it combines with that item and produces a whole new effect to those items. And that's really neat for switching up things, because there's a fire book, an ice book, there's a wind book, etc. So I feel like I have a lot more items at my disposal to kind of take care of enemies. On the downside, it's definitely a lot easier. I'm absolutely just breezing through the game with no worries at all, and that is perfectly fine with me, because I kind of want something low impact on my gaming radar at the moment. So I've spent some hours with that, and I can't say how far I am from the end, but I know I'm close-ish. So it shouldn't take me too much long to beat it. But beyond that, I kind of went a little wild with the Steam Halloween sale.
Hey-o.
And I picked up some games, one of which was one I was wanting to play, and I finally got to it the other night. It was Death's Door.
Oh, yeah. He plays the bird, right?
Yeah, yes. So you play as a raven or a crow. I think it's a crow actually, and crows in this world are reapers, or grim reapers. And you go on your very first mission is to get this very, very big soul. Like each of the enemies have different souls, of course. And it's kind of the big one. It's like, hey, if you get this, then maybe you could take a vacation. Like, who knows? And and when you get this, when you defeat the first boss, the quote unquote first boss, you see this other crow, this much bigger crow, basically bonks you on your head and takes the souls away from you. And in their world, you have your I guess I'll consider it the underworld. It's where you work. Where there's other crows, other reapers there. You're just typing at your typewriters and stuff like that. But in there, you're immortal. Nothing can happen to you. You don't grow older. However, when you go through the doors into the mortal realm, that's when you are. You can age. You can get damaged and stuff, which explains the gameplay process. Mm-hmm. So, anyways. He takes your soul or your souls, and when you get a mission to get a soul, you cannot. Basically, you have to retrieve that soul back in order to go to your next mission or whatnot. Gotcha. The gameplay is very Zelda-like. It's a kind of top-down isometric. You run around. There's lots of puzzles to solve, which are really neat and obvious. There are a lot of obvious puzzles that you'll have to come back to later on after getting different types of abilities, which feel like it takes a while to get to, which isn't an issue. But I think I've been playing about 3-4 hours, and I barely received my first power-up, which is kind of a fire spell. But it's very charming, and there's a lot of quirky writing to it and really quirky characters. And it's not difficult, so to say, but I know that there are definitely going to be people who try to compare it to like a Zelda Dark Souls type game, but I definitely don't feel it's very much like that at all. It's more of a Zelda game to me than anything. At the moment, I'm really enjoying it. I do think that it can benefit from a map because it is very open-ended, like Dark Souls map structure is.
Okay,
gotcha.
To where like eventually you'll open up a new area that kind of, in a very long-winded way, comes back around, and you can kind of go through things.
Sure.
And then you have your workplace, where all the Reapers gather around, is like a hub world, and then different doors go to these different areas. But there were different times when I was in a castle that I was kind of like, where do I go next? Like, there was really no good way to point you where to go. You had to really remember. And that's not a big deal, but for me, as somebody who likes his time, I kind of wish there was a more streamlined process, but it's very neat. I like it a lot, and I can't wait to get more into it. And I'm able to juggle it easily with the next game I've been playing, which is a really cool one I discovered through the Halloween sale, and it's a first-person shooter called Forgive Me, Father. And
have not heard of this. Excited.
So this one is an early access game. And it is set in the 1920s. It is eldritch, Lovecraftian horror, and it is Doom, but with like a comic book. Aesthetic over it.
Yeah. I have seen this. Yeah, this looks sick. Yeah,
and it is freaking cool because so it plays like Doom. But I think it more or less reminds me more of Hotline Miami than anything.
Okay.
Because you can get killed very easily. Enemies are not, what's that phrase? Enemies are in the same place every time, so it's not procedurally generated. That's the phrase. Gotcha. But there are times, because you kind of get familiar where the enemies are every time you die, there are times when you're like, all right, I'm going to do it this time, and you blaze through the level with your shotgun, and it's where every enemy is, and it feels good to take them out quickly and efficiently. And as you do that, your madness meter goes up, and as it goes up, you do more damage, and you get more refills to some of your items. I think that some of the enemy designs are really unique. in the way that they are presented. There are obvious beginner zombie characters, but there is a zombie character you meet soon after that's holding a head. And if you get a headshot on the zombie, that zombie will take the head that's in its hand and put it where you
Okay.
can
Oh, I love that.
So it keeps coming at you. Like there's no stopping point for it. So you have to really pay attention. And they took into the account the type of characters that are in like the 1920s Prohibition era setting. And so you fight lots of mobsters, and they are the stereotypical like zoot suit mobsters.
Yeah, see?
Yeah. And they have diagonally across their chest, they're stapled together very Frankenstein or creature
like stitches, like or staples. Yeah, sure.
yeah, right, staples, exactly. So sometimes, not always, but sometimes when you shoot at them, they separate themselves so the bullets like just pass through them.
Oh, okay.
And they keep coming at you. They don't do it all the time, but every now and again I'll catch them doing it, and I'm like, oh, damn it, and I have to kill them again.
Yeah.
And so their canes that they carry with them, shoot projectiles at you because they're kind of like mages in that sense, which is like a really neat idea. And then like cops have, or the policemen, former policemen, have apparatuses on their shoulder that have some sort of I don't know, I guess it's acid, and they'll shoot it at you in little orbs, and you can choose to shoot that and it'll explode and cover them, and then they rush at you because they're now like kind of partial skeleton because the acid has burned them. And it's really cool. It's really fast. It's really unique. It's very obviously Doom, and it wears that inspiration on its sleeve. But I think they've done enough, particularly with the art style and just how the game operates, that I'm finding it extremely enjoyable. Like I said, it's early access, so when you pull up your upgrade tree, there's a ton of work in progress stuff that's just not there. So I think that there's going to be a lot to this game eventually. There is a story, but it's extremely vague. Throughout the world, you will see like barrels and the word story on it, or like a deck of cards and the word story on it. And if you go up to it and press E, you will like pick it up and kind of look at it. But most of the time that you do it, you'll just find like ledgers with people's names on it, or you'll find like a passage of something that doesn't seem to make much sense in the overarching story. It's just kind of like a piece of the world that's going on.
Okay.
You can tell that there was some sort of election at the time going on between a very high profile mobster and then someone else who seems like a not factory worker, but union worker.
Oh, okay.
Like coming up, and then just something has happened to this world at the moment. And then sorry, it hasn't happened much, and I wish it would happen more, but there was a part in the first level where you come up to a split path, and on the wall right in front of you it says easy path this way. And immediately when I saw that, I was like, that doesn't, I think it's lying to me,
Mm-hmm.
And so I went around that corner. Right when I went around the corner, your character will speak. He has a speech bubble at the bottom, and he'll say something like, this place doesn't make me feel good. And all of a sudden, like, you get bombarded out of nowhere. It's a blink of an eye. Like, it's kind of a hallucination. Like, enemies are all of a sudden in front of you, and you have this like a filter effect on your screen as if you're obviously hallucinating.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to survive that. But if you go the other way, you have to pull out a lantern. Like, you press right click to pull out a lantern and like see through the pathway that you're trying to go through. There's not like a ton more that I can say about it, because I've only gotten to like level 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how many levels there are, but yeah, I think it was like $13 on sale. It's only $15 normally, but the game looked rad enough that I just wanted to check it out, and it's really cool. I like it a lot.
Awesome. Good to hear.
And that's what I've been playing.
Connor.
I have started playing Final Fantasy XIV with some friends. Yeah. I don't have much to say about it because we're all busy. So I've created a character, ran around in the world, but not much else. So more to come soon.
Okay. All right. So what have I been playing? I played a little bit more of Silent Hill 4. Silent Hill 4, I think, is really interesting because it has what I think are palpable themes, but I don't know if it's intended or not. And what I mean by this is Silent Hill 4 The Room is about a guy named Henry who is trapped in his apartment, and it's locked from the inside. And the game goes back and forth between these first-person segments where you're in his apartment, and then you enter a tunnel. There's this hole in the wall that takes him to Silent Hill, and it's the weird, there's ghosts and monsters and creepy stuff. And when you reach the end of that, you go back to his apartment, and it's first person again. And when you're in his apartment, things happen around him, and the world changes. But one palpable theme about it is how often you're sort of peeking at something. The front door has a looking peephole in it. And so if you go to that, you see people outside his front door all the time. The side of his wall has a hole in it where he can see into his neighbor's bedroom. And it's kind of creepy because it's a woman's bedroom. So he's sort of peeping at her. There's a message on the side of the wall that says I think it insinuates that he's been trying to dig through the wall, but it's impossible, so he can't dig his way out of his own apartment. And then also he has windows, and when you look out the window and across sort of the courtyard, you see into other people's apartments' windows, and there are little people doing random things over there. And I remember one of the maybe more famous moments from Silent Hill 4 is you go into a room and there's a gigantic head of a character just staring at you as you go into this room, sort of staring back. So I think all that's interesting. What I can't speak to, and Richard, this was something I was going to ask you if you had more context on, is where you think Silent Hill 4 ranks on the good to bad Silent Hill scale and stuff like that, because I've never played any of the other Silent Hills except 4, and I love the hell out of 4 because it's weird and creepy, and like I said, I think there's something there about like, I'm not even sure what it is, but like the perverse sort of peaking, I don't know, it's kind of a vague, and maybe it's not a theme at all, maybe it's something I'm grasping on that's nothing, but there's a lot of interesting stuff in the game. So yeah, anyway, I'll go back to the question. In your opinion, I'll say, do you think, and I'm also assuming that you've played most of the Silent Hills, which I don't know for sure. Okay.
I have not. I'm scared shitless of them.
Oh, okay. Well,
so I played 1 and 2, but I've not played 3 and 4.
Oh, okay.
So I don't have a good, all I can give you is just the conversations I've seen throughout the years about that game, which are not the best barometer for how Silent Hill 4 ranks, because if you ask the fans, they'll tell you it's one of the worst ones.
Oh, well, okay.
But it comes from a point of strictly like, this isn't Silent Hill, or apparently it was actually a completely different game. It wasn't a Silent Hill game. It was they were developing it as a completely different game, and they just came along and was like, slap Silent Hill on it. So.
Oh, really interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So fans usually point to that and they're like, it's not a real Silent Hill game, so it doesn't count. But I think for all intents and purposes, from what I understand, regardless, it still is a good game.
Sure. I enjoyed it, and I think it's good, and I think it's mysterious and all that fun stuff. But yeah, I can't evaluate it within the context of Silent Hill because I've never played any other Silent Hills. And if I wanted to play the first Silent Hill, I'd have to cut off an arm and sell it to some random used game salesman.
We'll make sure that you play all of them. We'll make sure of that.
Oh yeah, well there is that way too. There is the the emulator way as well, which
you can't say that word on a Christian stream, okay?
Christian stream. What else have I been playing? Oh, and so the other game that I'm working on a review of right now is Midnight Protocol, which is a hacking game that is played completely with a keyboard. There's no mouse, no controllers. It's all keyboard. All your interactions are with the keyboard, and then your moves when you're doing the hacking are all programs that you type in. So how the game is played is it's played on sort of not a grid, but you move point to point. Nodes is what the game calls them. And so you move through these networks and you have to do something on the network to progress through the story. It's turn-based. You get 2 actions per turn, and then there may be other hackers on the network that are trying to stop you or whatever. But everything you do is typed in. So if you want to move to a node, you have to hit move, and then you have to type in the name of the node and hit enter, and then you move. And then the nodes' names are usually like a letter and then a number. So like alpha 1, alpha, or A1, A2, B2, B1, E1, C1, whatever. So you just type that in and you move, and then you've got all kinds of other actions that you can do. There's ice that appears. There's a lot of really creative stuff. The problem is I don't like it at all. And it's for
Oh no.
and it's something where I don't know if it's just my preference, if it's a really good game that I just don't like, or if it is something that is bad. And I'm having trouble finding a distinction there. But it's gotten to the point where there is a setting in the game that you can make the game easier, and one of the settings is you basically become invincible and you play it for the story. And I'm almost just going to do that. Because how the gameplay works is you are always on a timer whenever you're doing a mission. But the timer it's not a time, it's I'm not even sure how to explain it. It's sort of a turn limit, right? So there's this thing called tracking protocol. When you hack into a network, there's a tracking protocol. And if this tracking protocol fills up all the way, it kicks you off the network and you lose. Or your computer shorts out. And so you have to replay the mission or reload the save before the mission, something like that. And this tracking protocol fills up by 1 every single time your turn is over. So if the tracking protocol is 10, in a vacuum, you have 10 turns to complete the mission, right? And this is every mission that I've played. I'm about 14 hours in. Now, there are ways where you can negate this. For example, there's a program called Cloak. You type in Cloak, you hit enter, and then your avatar is blocked from the tracking protocol by a certain percentage. So right now, when I type in Cloak, I get a 75% chance to trick the tracking protocol into not detecting me, right? So in a mission that has 10 turns, that gives me 10 turns to beat it, I get a 75% chance to not get tracked, right? Does that make sense? So 10 turns can become much more with Cloak because I get 75% chance of not getting detected at the end of every single turn, right? Here's where things get annoying. So you have processing power, and you start with 8 slices of processing power. And anytime you do an action or an attack or whatever, it takes processing power. So if I want to have a 75% chance at evading the tracking protocol, I have to do the full 8 slices. However, let's say I come across ice and I have to get through the ice somehow. There are tons of ways to get through the ice, but everything I do, I have to subtract from the cloak, and then I have to give slices to the program I have attacking the ice so that it can attack the ice. And programs' effectiveness are relative to the number of slices you give them. So there's a program called Dagger, which is a stealthy way to stab ice, which is, I forget what ICE stands for, electronic counter, I don't remember now. But it's hacking, it's like a firewall type thing. But anyway, so there's Dagger, right? So if you give Dagger 2 slices, it does very little damage, and it takes forever to break through ice. Now, my cloak is still at 6 slices, which means I have a decent chance of avoiding the tracker, but not great. And I can give the Dagger more power so that I can get through the ice quicker, but then that definitely means the tracking protocol is going to get me, so there's a give and take. And for every action in the game that you do, there's this give and take. And it's annoying because the game's really difficult, and it doesn't feel like it's fulfilling difficult or, I don't know, creative difficult. It's just difficult, and you get into game missions, and it's just I'm constantly restarting the mission, because you can restart the mission at any time. You put in rollback mission restarts from the top. And there are missions where I am just constantly roll back, because after a certain amount of turns, you get to a point where the prophecy is going to fulfill itself. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if I have to hack into a data node to get some piece of data, and that takes 3 turns, and tracking protocol has one thing left, chances are it's gonna track me, and then I'm gonna get kicked out, and I'm gonna fail the level. So I just restart a bunch. So it's annoying because I don't think it's balanced well. And I don't think I'm gonna put this in the review, and I'm really not sure if I'm gonna do a review or just a video about it. But it kind of reminds me of Divinity in a weird way, because Divinity is turn-based, and everything you do in Divinity affects like 10 other things. So early on in a Divinity battle, you cast Fireball. Fireball lands, turns some pool somewhere into fire. And then like 2 turns later, an ally goes down on the opposite side of that fire pool. And you're like, well, shit. The Fireball I cast now is blocking me from getting to my teammate, you know? And there's a lot of fun dynamics. And that makes Divinity really challenging, but it's fun tactically figuring those things out, right? In Midnight Protocol, there are other abilities you can get and stuff like that, but everything comes back to, are the benefits you get from this program worth letting that tracking protocol hunt you down and the timer go up? And for me, it's always like, no. So that makes it boring, because experimentation is not a big deal because you can roll back the mission. But this is another issue with the game, is that if you want to upgrade your hardware, your hacker's hardware, or the programs you have when you're hacking, it costs credits, and you get credits by stealing things in game, right? So again, because when you're in a network, you're on a time limit, stealing isn't always possible, because stealing takes time, or takes turns, and you may not have the turns to move to a node that has money and take the money. Also, there is a morality system in the game. So you can be a white hat hacker, you can be a black hat hacker. And depending on which route you go down, it can be tougher to make money. AKA, it's tougher to make money if you're a white hat hacker, because there's usually opportunities to steal money, but it will explicitly tell you this is a black hat option if you want to steal the savings account from this family or something like that. So it's like, well, okay, I'm not going to do that because I'm trying to roleplay it as a white hat hacker. So I've gotten into this rut where I've made little money, and buying upgrades is really difficult. And there's a ton of new abilities that I've unlocked, but they're super expensive, and the missions that I'm on are really difficult, and I'm constantly just restarting them, and it just doesn't feel fun. It's just annoying. Like in Divinity, when something bad happens, I would get mad, but I wouldn't say I don't want to play this. In Midnight Protocol, it's like the exact opposite. When something bad happens, it just, for whatever reason, it's just frustrating. Another thing that's a little annoying about Midnight Protocol is there are certain elements of the level that are randomized. So certain placement of ice will be random every time you reload the level. So sometimes you load into a level and it's hard. It's harder than it would be if you reloaded it. And that's just random. And the other thing that's random is if you have Cloak on, if tracking protocol is going to track you, right? So Connor and I could play through the same level. We both have Cloak on, which means we both have a 75% chance of tracking protocol not tracking us. But I get tracked a bunch because I happen to roll poorly, and Connor's doing great because he just happens to roll great. And so both of our experiences in the same level are completely different based solely on luck. And that's really annoying, especially if your luck shifts all of a sudden and you have to restart a mission that you've been playing for 15 minutes because your Cloak just rolled poorly a couple tracking protocols, and then you're like, oh, well, roll back, restart the entire mission. And yeah, it's only 15 minutes, but when it's mission after mission after mission after mission of that, it's just not fun. So there's also a story. I'm not going to talk about that. But it's got to the point where I just don't want to play it. And I don't know if it's a bad game. I don't know if the tracking protocol is too much, or if it's just not fitting my tastes. And that's the thing that I'm struggling with right now. But I have rammed my head into Midnight Protocol to figure out if I'm doing something wrong. Am I missing something? And thus far, I think it's just, I haven't found anything. So those are the two games. Go ahead.
That kind of sounds like a lot of my not your feelings about the game remind me a lot of how I feel about FTL. And just it's like I guess we'll call it the RNG, and I don't know if it's RNG in there, but it's more unfair than it is fair, and it drains on you for sure. But a lot of what goes on in that game definitely sounds fairly frustrating.
Yeah, and it's just an RPG, and I feel like it would be really good and really cool if there were things different about it. If you didn't have this tracking protocol in every single mission, because it's really creative. It's amazing when you're typing in commands and you get into that zone, that Mr. Robot zone, where you're just typing in commands left and right and tabbing, auto-completing commands, and and it's great. But then all of a sudden you're doing that, and tracking protocol grows, and you're like, oh, I guess I have to restart the mission. It's annoying. Anyway, were you gonna say something?
No, it's I was sighing because it sounds frustrating. So
okay, play the ad break.
I was gonna say.
Oh, Connor, no, go ahead and talk, Connor.
I was gonna say, when you're talking about when you're leading into like stealing and then in the morality of it, I was about to make the joke, yeah, Tyler, but stealing's wrong, and then you went into the game as a morality system.
Exactly.
Got him.
Exactly. Got him.
Like, well, damn.
Okay, play the ad break.
We want to give a massive shout out to the sponsors of this episode. They have been silently supporting us since the very beginning, and we felt it was time to give them some love. The like and share buttons have been at our side since episode 1 of the podcast. They can be found just beneath this episode. Please give them a click, it helps us greatly. If you're feeling lucky, click the bell icon to enter for a notification anytime we post new content. You may be surprised by what you get.
Richard.
Activision Blizzard.
What's going on? We're not as in tune because we're talking over Skype.
I'm sorry, we're screwing this up already.
What's going on in Activision Blizzard?
Activision Blizzard is promising more pay transparency, and an end to forced arbitration. Story by Jason Schreier, the Schrei guy. 5 new changes have been announced in a statement from CEO Bobby Kotick. Zero tolerance harassment policy company-wide will be implemented. Let's hope they stick to that. They will be increasing the number of women and non-binary people in the workforce by 50%, resulting in about a third of the workforce at Activision Blizzard. They will be waiving required arbitration of sexual harassment and discrimination claims. They will continue to increase visibility on pay equity, and Activision Blizzard will be providing regular updates on all of this. Also, Bobby Kotick is taking a pay cut, a very small pay cut, but he's taking a pay cut. He said, quote, "I have asked our board of directors to reduce my total compensation until the board has determined that we have achieved the transformational gender-related goals and other commitments described above. Specifically, I have asked the board to reduce my pay to the lowest amount California law will allow for people earning a salary, $62,500. To be clear, this is a reduction in my overall compensation, not just my salary. I am asking not to receive any bonuses or be granted any equity during this time." As Eurogamer pointed out, Bobby Kotick has already earned $155 million via a bonus earlier this year. And in other Blizzard news, Jen O'Neill is stepping down as co-head of Blizzard, leaving Mike Ybarra in charge. They both replaced J. Allen Brack a couple months back with the accusations, or not accusations, but all the
fallout and whatnot. Sure.
Yeah. So what was going on? Excuse me. And Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4 are now delayed. So they've done something.
Yes, they've done something. It reminds me. This kind of reminds me of the episode in The Office where Will Ferrell is the manager, and he's like, "I don't care how you feel we're doing ice cream Fridays. And everyone's like, these are good ideas. Why are you yelling at us? Anyway, it just reminded me of that because, like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do more pay transparency. I don't care if you like it or not. No, so I think everything here is good. The pay cut, I have no idea. Like, when I read that he took this huge pay cut, it was just... I thought to myself, okay, well, there's no way he's actually only being paid $62,500 for the year, right? I'm sure he's got money in other places and stuff like that because he's one of the highest paid CEOs in the country. And the other thing is, I keep going back to the statement this company made when all this stuff first came out. Do you remember? Not only was it denying everything, it also... Mm-hmm. It stopped short of being a political attack on Californian politics.
Absolutely did, yeah.
It stopped just short of being that. And really, if you dug a little between the lines, that's exactly what it was California's a liberal state that doesn't let us companies do what we want to do. That's what it was. And now look at the statement. And now the statement is, I'm reducing my salary. You guys were right. Here's 5 things we're doing. Good Lord. Like, what?
That statement at the start too is so contradictory because like California is like the one state that provides the majority of the money to the U.S.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Well, yeah, the economics of it to the side, just right, the fact, just the sheer. These are Grand Canyon size differences in statements and luckily this is the outcome that I think people wanted. And I saw a better Activision Twitter handle. I saw them tweet out that they were excited for this. And yeah, Jason Schreier tweeted out that this was a big win for people that were lobbying for better conditions at Activision Blizzard and stuff like that. So I think,
of course,
all that's great. And go ahead.
It is all great, but the one thing that matters at the end of the day is if they continue to do this. And I don't want to hear another story a year from now about how things haven't changed, much like we have 2 or 3 times now with Ubisoft in the last year. So it is great that we are now seeing some change. It is a start. For some, it may not be enough, which is understandable. But it definitely is a start. So let's see where it goes from here. But yeah, we want to see this change continue, not just, give the word and then not hear anything for a half year before there's something else that happens.
Sure. And I think It was interesting that this happened a few days before the statement or the discussion that Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2 were being delayed and that Jen O'Neill was stepping down. I don't necessarily think those things have anything to do with one another, but those are interesting. No,
they are. Sorry to interrupt. I believe that the Diablo and Overwatch have been delayed due to the fact that pretty much the heads of both games have up and left.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah.
So for Diablo 4, it was because whoever was leading the project was involved in the incidents earlier, or the incidents that have happened earlier. That were reported on earlier this year. Jesus Christ. and then for Overwatch, of course, Jeff Kaplan leaving, and then I believe another person left Overwatch as well. So yeah, that was the reason for those two happening.
Yeah, and there's a lot riding on those titles for Activision Blizzard, and I hope they hit home runs with them because the artists and the developers at Activision Blizzard are really talented, and Overwatch was great. People have mixed feelings about Diablo 3 and stuff, but I really like Diablo 3, and all of the footage for Diablo 4 looks awesome. And I think this makes me feel a little bit better about, I don't know. Because we have the discussion all the time about, like, how do we feel about buying Activision Blizzard games or Ubisoft games, what have you. But, I don't fault anyone for still thinking, F Activision Blizzard, and I'm still not buying any of their games. But it makes me, if I had to buy one, it makes me feel better than buying a Ubisoft game. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
One thing about this that still bothers me, even with this statement, and it's in this statement, is the line, and I've asked our board of directors to reduce my total compensation until the board has determined we have achieved the transformational gender related. So really, Bobby Kotick is just saying, yes, it's a slap on the wrist for me. He is going to, be taking his massive amounts of money that he makes from Activision Blizzard going forward after, they settle this.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, for at least a month, because Call of Duty releases in 2 weeks, and once they get the earnings from that, they'll be like, "All right, Bobby, here's your money back."
It feels very placatey. Like this will settle the masses. I'll take a pay cut.
That may be the case,
and maybe I'm just being cynical.
Well, and I don't think you're wrong for being cynical, because this is the AAA game industry we're talking about. So it wouldn't surprise me if something like that happened. But yeah, that is interesting. That it's the board that's deciding that's deciding when they meet these goals. When I don't remember who's on the Activision Blizzard board. I don't even know if I've ever known who's on that board. But
and
were
like,
were they at the walkouts and stuff? I don't know. Maybe they were. I don't think so.
I mean, and instead of it being I'm taking a pay cut and that money is going towards X to improve our company going forward, it's just until we reach our goals, then it's whatever.
Sure. Oh. Give it to all the artists. Do that.
Yes.
New World has lost half of its player base. As first spotted by Forbes' Paul Tassi, New World peaked at 900. Oh man, I am saying a lot of wrong things. Forbes' Paul Tassi pointed out that New World peaked at 913,000 players and has since lost an average of about 135,000 players per week. Reading from Tassi's story, for most games, a decline like this wouldn't be a problem, but for an MMO where the entire purpose is to sustain a player base over a long period of time, dropping to almost a third of your peak after your first month is somewhat alarming and shows that something has to be done about player retention. End quote. There's a lot to get into here. But I think this is an interesting case study, because I'm going to explain my theory, and I don't have the evidence to back up this theory besides intuition, which is, if I were Amazon, which I don't know what the biggest company in the world is, Disney, Apple, but Amazon's up there, and I started a game company. And I wanted this game company to be successful. I imagine a goal of a single player finite experience and putting tons of resources into that would have been a better goal than we need to make PUBG or Fortnite or a lifestyle game, a game as a service, whatever. Because along with normal game development stuff, you also have all of this other shit that you have to do, like sustaining the player base, updating the game, blah, 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 blah. And so, while I can't say for sure that making a game like that is more difficult than like a finite single player experience, there's only so much you can do in God of War, right? Like, there's only so much you can experience. It's not continually being updated with, Kratos wearing a freaking pumpkin on Halloween or something like that. Right? So there's only so much you can do, and so they can move on, be finished with it, release it, whatever. It just seems like that's a more sustainable goal, and you don't have to worry about competing with these other player bases and creating retention and working with microtransactions. And it's not to say that I think these things are necessarily wrong, because they aren't, especially if you're a smaller studio and you need something that can sustain itself, that is more than just a single game release. But again, this is Amazon. Like, they're massive.
Right.
If they released a finite single player game that they put a ton of resources into and it wasn't great, I feel like would that have been as big of a, I don't know. I'm not going to call New World a failure. I haven't even played the game, so I can't, from a game perspective, I can't tell you whether or not it's bad or good or whatever. But just back to my original point. I feel like that's a more sustainable goal. And that's intuition. I can't prove it. It just seems to make sense. Another thing is, I think I have to wonder, do Amazon executives understand what's going on here? Because every single game that comes out right now is blowing up markets, setting records, taking the world by storm, right? But not all of them are sustaining that. And God knows why this is happening. But a part of that is FOMO, is fear of missing out. And a part of that is people like playing with their friends. And I guess maybe you could fold that into fear of missing out. I don't know. So, and I think another part of that is people enjoy the game as a service structure. And so they're open to new games as services or whatever. And so maybe they bounce around. But this has happened before. And so I wonder, do Amazon executives understand that that was a risk? Or is this something that is completely unexpected? Because when I read this, I thought to myself, okay, this doesn't seem that surprising to me, because not every live service game can be super successful because there's a finite market, and so not everyone can have all of that finite market. Anyway,
right.
Those are my thoughts.
You're exactly right, and I think you're exactly right with a large amount of your points. I think something that I've been thinking about recently as well is the evolution of the game industry in general from 2000 and on, particularly with the introduction of like online play and the internet, and even more so in the last 5+ years with streamers and streaming. We have this market in this industry that now that I've seen within the last 2 to 3 years is all about the next big thing and jumping from A to B very quickly, very consistently. And one of the biggest things that attribute to that is streamers. And New World was very huge with streamers because that was something that people wanted to watch play. And from those streamers, you have your viewers who decide that they want to give that game a shot. But they may or may not be the type of viewers to stick with a game for a long amount of time. Actually, a large majority of people do not stick with things for X amount of time. And that's why we have things like, I guess recently I can point to Guardians of the Galaxy, a single player story focused game that when you're done and you can move on. And people don't feel like nowadays they have time to kind of stick around and stay with one thing like they did in the mid 2000s with World of Warcraft, when that was the only thing that people wanted to play for until 2015. And then excuse me, with the advent of the battle royale genre, MMOs have kind of, I don't want to say dwindled or taken a back seat, because some would say they're more popular than ever. I could look at Final Fantasy XIV, obviously. Connors started playing that, recently. And with the battle royale genre, hop in, play a little bit, hop out, no consequence to you as a player. But there's more time to invest in something like New World or big MMOs nowadays. And also, I think, and this is my personal opinion, I also just don't think the concept of New World was particularly interesting.
Yeah, I would agree there.
Yeah.
People enjoy Final Fantasy XIV. I'll go back to that. You have a high fantasy medieval-esque themed game, but you have all these wacky things like martial artists using magic and Magitech armors and pseudo mechs like in the game, and it's just a mishmash of things that people love. But having a game solely focused on a fictional historical type of setting, I don't think it's really interesting to a lot of people as well. And then I do hear that New World in general is kind of a tough pill to swallow when you're playing it. It's not particularly engaging or fun. But once again, I don't know. Just like you, Tyler, I haven't played it either, so I can't make too harsh of judgments on it.
Yeah, and I don't want to say like I'm super smart, because I'm not, but I felt like this is what was going to happen with New World. Not that I wanted this to happen, but it just made sense because it's happened with so many games as a service that release. And so, maybe executives do understand the risks. They just don't give a shit, because if it succeeds, great. If not, I'll just go to my place out in Martha's Vineyard and we'll plan what we're going to do next quarter, with our next big game, and we'll fire some artists or something, right? That's a little cynical and I'm being tongue in cheek, but I mean, maybe that's the motivation behind it. I don't know. Connor, did you want to say anything before we move on?
Yeah. Kind of piggybacking on with what all you guys have been saying. I think their goal more was to make a profitable game rather than a successful game, which those can be the same thing or two entirely different ideas. Because even if you take the peak player count, 913,000 people, and you throw the $40 Steam purchase on there, and then you take Steam's cutout, it still made $25 million.
Sure.
Like that's
a good chunk.
That's profitable. Yeah. That's a good business day unless you're really that cynical about your business making $25 million.
And unless you, because I think we have to remember that part of the game's concept is that it's going to have a long monetization tail, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they not only want those day one sales, those month one sales, whatever, but part of the enticement is, and we're also going to have a year of updates and microtransactions, and we're going to have people that continuously play the game and dump thousands of dollars. Look at all these games where it's working, and
something that we've harped on a bunch is making a game first, then making the game profitable. So for example, World of Warcraft, all right, hugely popular MMO. Everyone tries to emulate it with its player count. People tend to forget that World of Warcraft came out 10 years after Warcraft. It had enough time to build up a player base to get people to want to play it. Instead of just kicking open the door, here's an MMO, go play it. It had a decade's worth of people playing their games. And then they're like, hey, play this one that you can play forever. And then they continuously add new big expansions to the game that just keep people retained. People just see the end result and like, oh, we can do that. And they just go into it half-cocked and make 25 million, but then they don't get the profit tail that they're looking for because they didn't necessarily make a good game to start with.
Yeah.
They just made a profitable game.
Exactly. Anybody else have anything to say before we go on?
Nope.
Facebook is getting rid of Oculus branding and the required Facebook login for VR. Maybe, though, we're not really sure about this. All of this is, is from Meta's Chief Tech Officer, Andrew Bosworth. Starting in 2022, Oculus Quest from Facebook will be Meta Quest, and the Oculus app will be the Meta Quest app. And just as an aside, this sounds like a joke. Anyway, for the required Facebook VR login, Bosworth says, quote, "We've heard feedback from the VR community more broadly. We're working on new ways to log into Quest that won't require a Facebook account, landing sometime next year. This is one of our highest priority areas of work internally," end quote. I like feedback there because they heard feedback in the same way that people are giving feedback to drivers who are stopped at a green light. That's the sort of feedback that Facebook is getting from forcing people to link their Oculus and Facebook accounts. The Oculus and a Facebook account thing should have never happened. It was always dumb, and it had nothing to do with here's maybe it's because I'm biased, because when I put on a headset, and Richard, you can attest to this, and Connor, you can attest to this too. When you put on a headset and you play a VR game and you realize, holy shit, can you imagine? What if you did this? What if you did that? What if 2 years ago, 3 years ago, what if you put a Resident Evil game fully in VR, and then they did it, and it's one of the best VR games we've ever played, right? Or, 10 years ago, Connor, man, wouldn't it be cool if you could control a submarine in VR and we have Iron Wolf, and it's amazing, intense, and great, right? So when I think about VR, I don't think about VR's power to take you into a boardroom so you can meet with other people in a meeting. I think about its power to make amazing games. And sure, it probably has other stuff too, but I feel like that's something that's really palpable and right in front of us right now. And I get frustrated because I don't think that's Facebook's goal, or Meta's goal, or Grizzle's goal, or whatever the hell their company's name is. And and I think the goals that they have with the whole metaverse thing, with these lofty ideals, are just funny, because this is coming from a company that created a monster and they just don't know how to control it. It's like Frankenstein, rising his monster and then turning to the left, and he's like got this other monster, and in the background, Frankenstein's monster's wreaking havoc on the village. But he's got this other monster that he's like working on. It's hilarious. I mean, it'd be funny if it were a comic. And that makes me, and of course, to underpin all that, Oculus has a huge swath of the market, right? Because of the accessibility of the Quest 2, which is great. It's a good headset, whatever. But it sucks that it doesn't feel like the company that has a huge swath of the
market share.
The market, it doesn't feel like their priority is, we need to figure out how to make the best goddamn games for VR. Not because we need to have one and we don't know how, but because the potential is there, and every year we get a game that blows our goddamn minds. And as someone who plays games, maybe that's just a bias. I don't know. Maybe it's just a bias. Maybe people don't see it the same way. I laugh with the whole idea about like these social interactions in VR and stuff like that. It's just like, I don't know, man. People don't want to go to meetings. They barely want to talk about things over email. You're going to tell me people are going to have to put on a headset and go to a meeting? like, come on. And I understand it's like, well, a mechanic could work on a car, a doctor could, and like, all those things are great, but that's so far into the future, and I don't think you could perform surgery with Quest 2 controllers. So, anyway.
Not successful surgery, at least.
It's unfortunate because, yes, one of the things that makes the Quest 2 so successful is its experiences. But those experiences are video games. They aren't, like you said, like going to a meeting, VR chat, what have you. They are, Population 1. They are Resident Evil 4 VR. They are games that and soon to be Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
That's right, yeah.
Games that we want to be in, because that is something that we have always asked for. Like, how many times have you said, man, well, I mean, I don't know if this is a funny example I'm going to use, but like, have you ever thought to myself, man, it'd be really cool to live in the Mass Effect world, I mean, without the Reapers and all the crap, but still.
Nah, bring them on.
Or like, how many people, like, I mean, is weird as some people are, like, cool if I could be in the Dark Souls world. Like, you guys are weird. But anyways, but yeah, so it's very, the most disappointing thing is them misconstruing like what made the Quest 2 popular in the first place. On top of that, getting rid of the Quest branding, like Quest is synonymous like with VR, in my opinion, because they were one of the first out of the gates, if not the first out of the gate with this technology. And now you're just going to get rid of that.
Sorry, you're talking Oculus, not because
Oculus. Sorry.
No,
I'm
good,
so sorry. Yes, Oculus. Ugh, Oculus. Yeah. And now we have to deal with Meta World Peace Quest, and it's not. It's just another. It's another way for them to set up a new way to get into everyone's homes.
Sure. And I don't think it's too cynical.
And not in the good way.
Yeah, and what's Facebook's track record? Like,
terrible.
All it's been is horrible. And so I'm sorry if I sound cynical, but it's like, I don't believe... listen, and this is what Frances Haugen said, that it's not like the people at Facebook are malicious. Or was it Francine or France? I think it made Francine Haugen. I don't remember her name off the top of my head, the Facebook whistleblower. Yeah. But it's not like these people are malicious. It's just, on one hand, they've got this beast that they can't control, that's difficult to control, but the beast also rewards its most negative impulses. Give rewards, right? Outrage, anger, vitriol. And that's good for business. And people have to figure out how to work that. And then there's just advertisements and figuring out how to monetize. If a service is free, you're the product. Facebook is free, so guess what the product is? And so, yeah, I hate all that stuff getting into VR. Maybe it's because I'm just super passionate about VR. And I know you guys are too. It's just, it's something that I'm particularly passionate about, I guess. I don't know, because I've played in it a long time, and every year I play a game that blows me away. And it's just like, if more companies invested in this, there's whole new experiences you could unlock, whole new areas of creativity, of development, of storytelling, of design. But no, it's, hey, engagement on a meta level to the Facebook. It's whatever. Richard, are you going to say something?
I was, and I have missed it, which sucks because it was going to build on something else. But if you do have an Oculus Quest headset at the moment and you do not want your Facebook account tied to it, there have been reports in the subreddit, the Oculus Quest subreddit, that you can message the customer service and they will unlink your account for you right now, and you'll be A-okay. So if you choose to do that.
That feels so silly. That's such a Major Nelson, you can't flip a switch type thing,
Oh, absolutely.
That's and it's not because Facebook ever said we can't just do that, but it just shows that it was never something that it was a move that had nothing to do with the integrity of VR, making quality VR experiences. It was about forcing people into the engagement model of Facebook, which is annoying as hell. Anyway, moving on to Tidbits. A man discusses the news, but not like the big news, the little news. Little bit. This is the Tidbits.
Shoji Meguro has left Atlus, unfortunately. Shoji Meguro, if you don't know, is the composer of the entire Persona series, the one who makes all of the music, all the excellent music of the Persona series. He has been around since the first Persona game, and he, up until, once again, Persona 5 Royal, actually, was the composer for each of the games. He actually left Atlus in September to begin work on indie game development, something that he found an interest in throughout all of his years of working. He does remark, though, that his work on the Persona series will continue. He is still going to be independently employed by Sega, so we don't have any worries about not having really great music to the Persona series in the future. So there is that.
How often do mainline Persona games have, like, what are their, on average, the spaces between them? Has it changed a lot? Or?
It's kind of nowadays. Hold on. Let me try to explain as best I can. So between 3 and 4, it was a couple years. I think it was maybe 2 to 4 years. But from 4 to 5 was like almost a decade. Because Persona 4 was actually, it was more than a decade. Yeah, Persona 4 was released on the PS2, I believe, in 2006, and we didn't get Persona 5 till I think 2016, 2017.
Yeah, 2016, 2017. So, it was one of the first games we talked about on the podcast. Yeah,
right. But Persona 5 knocked it out of the park. I mean, all the other Persona games are great, but Persona 5 knocked it out of the park as far as popularity wise. And since then, we have gotten, the Persona spin-off dancing games. Persona 4 Golden has been ported to PC. Persona 5 Royal, and so we've Persona 5 Strikers. So we have gotten a lot more games in recent years, but I think that's due to the massive popularity that has gained since then.
Sure. Every game series is more popular today than it was 10 years ago.
Yep, and then that's how it will be, thanks to, once again, like we talked about earlier, streamers and the internet. Sure. So. Snoop Dogg says that Dr. Dre is working on new music for Grand Theft Auto, a new Grand Theft Auto specifically. Obviously, there has not been one that has been announced, of course, but
sure.
That is interesting. Dr. Dre is making Dr. Dre making new music for a video game is very interesting due to the fact that fans have been waiting for new music from Dr. Dre for decades. He hasn't released an album since 2001, so this is very
really
very
2 decades.
Yeah. His
I don't know
last
anything
album
about him.
Well,
that's interesting.
I mean, he's featured on other songs, but
sure.
But he hasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Chronic 2001 is considered one of the best hip hop albums of all time, and so yeah. Anyways, also Dr. Dre being a quote unquote West Coast rapper, this may indicate that we could be going back to Los Santos or the West Coast setting of Grand Theft Auto. But who knows? We'll see, because these are just rumors. Thanks, Snoop Dogg. And finally, Far Cry 6 harasses you through email if you stop playing the game. Players who have stopped playing Far Cry 6 have come to find out that they have been receiving emails from the antagonist of the game making fun of them for not continuing playing. It also should be noted that the email is kind of addressed to the main character of the game and not specifically you. I do think that this is kind of neat. And I feel like I actually did get an email that was similar in this way, not with Far Cry 6, but one of the past Ubisoft games I played. I feel like I got an email that was something like that. But some people seem to have gotten a little, I don't want to say offended by it, but felt it was a bit invasive. And I don't think so at all. I think it's kind of tongue in cheek, honestly. But
if it were another company, but it's Ubisoft, so F them.
That is true. So that's it for the tidbits this week.
Okay. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook.
Real quick.
Connor, go ahead.
Yes. Richard.
Yeah.
I totally forgot this. Dre released an album in 2015.
Did he?
Yeah, called Compton.
What?
Yeah, I completely forgot about that. I was like, was that really his last album? And
I thought he was always working on that.
Nah, 2015 it dropped on Apple Music and iTunes.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why.
And that's
all right.
Connor's music news corner. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at the Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. Check out the Unsound Mind review. Video about Midnight Protocol coming up soon, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.